Have you ever arrived just a few minutes before death won? That question still stays in my mind whenever I look at the dog sleeping peacefully in my rescue center today. If I had arrived a little later that afternoon, I honestly don't think he would still be alive. Everything started with a phone call from a local resident. The man sounded nervous and out of breath as he explained that there was a dog lying near the edge of a remote embankment outside town. According to him, the dog had been chained there and hadn't moved for hours. People passing by initially thought he was sleeping, but as time went on, nobody saw him stand up, lift his head, or even react to the sounds around him. The caller said the dog looked like he was taking his final breaths and begged me to come quickly. The moment I received the location, I opened the map and started driving. I didn't know what I would find when I got there, but something about the urgency in the man's voice made me push harder on the accelerator. The road gradually became rougher as I left the city behind. Buildings disappeared and were replaced by empty fields, tall grass and narrow dirt paths. Dark clouds were gathering in the distance, and the wind blowing across the embankment made the entire area feel cold and lonely. When I finally arrived, I spotted the dog from several meters away, and my heart immediately sank. He wasn't sitting. He wasn't resting. He wasn't even trying to move. He was lying completely still beside a rusted chain that was attached to a stake in the ground. His body looked so lifeless that for a moment I genuinely believed I had arrived too late. I ran toward him and dropped to my knees beside his body. His ribs were clearly visible beneath dirty, tangled fur. His skin was stretched tightly across his bones, and it was obvious he hadn't eaten properly in a very long time. I checked his breathing and found almost nothing. Then I leaned closer and noticed the faintest movement in his chest. It was so weak that I almost missed it. He was still alive, but barely. His gums were pale, his body temperature had dropped significantly, and his pulse was dangerously weak. Every second mattered. There was no time to wait for anyone else. If this dog had any chance of surviving, it depended entirely on what happened in the next few minutes. I immediately began emergency CPR. I positioned him carefully and started chest compressions while monitoring his breathing. Between compressions, I assisted his airway and continued stimulating circulation. Minute after minute passed with almost no response. I kept talking to him even though I wasn't sure he could hear me. I told him to stay with me. I told him not to give up. I promised him that if he kept fighting, I would get him somewhere safe. My arms began to ache from the repeated compressions, but I refused to stop. Around 15 minutes into the rescue, I administered emergency supportive medication from my field kit to help stimulate circulation and preserve what little strength remained. Then I continued CPR. 20 minutes passed, then 25, then 30. Sweat ran down my face despite the cold wind. Every time I thought his body might be giving up, I pushed harder because I knew this dog had nobody else. Then something changed. One of his legs twitched slightly. At first I thought it was my imagination, but moments later it happened again. His breathing became deeper, his chest responded more consistently. His body was finally reacting to the treatment. Hope returned instantly. I continued working for several more minutes until his breathing became stable enough for transport. Looking down at him, I could see that somewhere inside that exhausted body there was still a powerful desire to survive. He wasn't ready to die. Only then did I fully notice the chain around his neck. It was old, rusted, and painfully tight. The skin underneath showed signs of irritation and prolonged restraint. I couldn't imagine how long he had been left there, exposed to rain, heat, cold nights, hunger and loneliness, yet somehow still alive. I grabbed a cutting tool from my vehicle and carefully broke the chain. The moment the metal hit the ground, it felt symbolic. For the first time in what may have been months, this dog was free. I wrapped him in a thick blanket to preserve body heat and gently carried him to my vehicle. His breathing remained fragile, but it was stronger than before. That tiny improvement was enough to keep me going. The drive back to the veterinary clinic felt endless. Every few minutes I checked his breathing. Every breath felt like a victory. When we finally arrived, the veterinary team immediately took over. Intravenous fluids were started, vital signs were monitored, additional medications were administered according to emergency veterinary protocols. Nutritional support, hydration therapy, circulation support, and medications designed to stabilize his condition were all introduced as quickly as possible. For the next several hours, there was nothing to do except wait and hope. The first hour passed slowly. The second felt even longer. By the third hour, everyone was watching closely for signs of improvement. Then suddenly one of the technicians called my name. I turned and saw the dog blinking. His eyes were open, only slightly at first, but open. He looked confused and disoriented, as if trying to understand where he was. The bright lights above him must have seemed strange after everything he had endured. I approached carefully and spoke softly. His eyes followed me. Then, for the first time since I found him, his tail moved. It wasn't a full wag. It was barely noticeable, but to everyone standing in that room, it felt like a miracle. Over the next several days, his condition improved steadily. His appetite returned. His body temperature normalized. His pulse strengthened. The veterinarians were amazed by how quickly he responded once his basic needs were finally met. Every meal he finished felt like another step away from death. Every morning he looked slightly stronger than the day before. One afternoon, after receiving approval from the veterinary team, I decided it was finally time to give him a proper bath. Warm water washed away layers of dirt, mud, and neglect. The water flowing down the drain turned dark almost immediately. Beneath all that grime was a completely different dog. Once he was clean, I carefully dried him with warm air and brushed his coat. For the first time, he looked comfortable. For the first time, he looked safe. As the weeks passed, he continued gaining weight and rebuilding his strength. His coat became healthier. His eyes regained brightness. His personality slowly emerged. Despite everything he had suffered, he was incredibly gentle. He followed people calmly, accepted affection with gratitude, and never showed aggression. Every morning he greeted me with a wagging tail. Every evening he waited for me near the kennel door. Somewhere during those weeks, I stopped searching for potential adopters. Without realizing it, I had already made my decision. The dog who had nearly died on that lonely embankment wasn't going anywhere. I officially welcomed him into my rescue family. He received his own bed, his own food bowl, and eventually his own place among the other animals I cared for. Watching him experience simple comforts for the first time was one of the most rewarding parts of the journey. A warm blanket, a full meal, fresh water, gentle hands, things that most dogs take for granted felt completely new to him. Yet he embraced every bit of kindness, as though he understood exactly how close he had come to losing everything. Today, when I watch him running happily across the yard, it is almost impossible to believe he is the same dog I found chained beside that embankment. The scars of his past remain, but they no longer define him. What defines him now is his second chance. He no longer wakes up cold and hungry. He no longer waits alone for someone who never comes back. He no longer lives at the end of a chain. Instead, he lives surrounded by safety, friendship, and love. Every time I see him sleeping peacefully, I remember that desperate afternoon and the fight we shared to keep him alive. And every time I tell his story, I am reminded of one simple truth: no matter how hopeless the situation may seem, as long as there is still a heartbeat, there is still a chance for a new beginning.